The strange encounter. The stars were quiet, endless and cold, and the small human ship drifted between them like a forgotten toy, its engines weak, its hull scratched from battles with silence and storms, and inside that fragile craft worked a man, alone, tired, but alive. He was an engineer, a wanderer, someone who fixed machines when no one else could, someone who traded skills for food, fuel, or just a chance to survive another day in deep space. He had no empire, no army, no family, only his tools, his ship, and the stubborn heart that kept beating even when everything else tried to stop. For days he had been repairing his reactor, using spare wires, broken parts, and hope. The hum of the engine was soft, almost like a whisper, and then without warning, the quiet of space was shattered, a signal. It cut through the void like a cry, faint but sharp, coded in a language he did not know, yet heavy with urgency. The man froze, his hands hovering over the panel, his breath caught. It was not human, not from any colony he knew. It was alien, old and strange. He told himself to ignore it, to stay safe, to keep moving. Out here, unknown signals meant danger. They meant traps, pirates, or worse. But curiosity is stronger than fear, and his hands moved on their own, setting course, following the faint trail of broken light across the dark sea of stars. Hours passed. The nebula came into view, a cloud of violet and silver gas twisting like a living thing. His ship slipped into the mist and the signal grew louder. Somewhere in that storm of color and silence was the source. He saw it at last, hidden deep in the nebula's heart. A ship. Not like his. Not human. Its design was graceful, sharp as a blade, yet shining like a crown. Its hull was cracked. Lights flickered weakly and power bled from its engines like blood from a wound. The man hesitated. This was no ordinary vessel. This was royal. This was something that should have never been left adrift. He docked slowly, carefully, his ship locking onto the wounded giant. The airlock hissed, the metal groaned, and with a deep breath he stepped inside. The halls were silent, carved with alien symbols, lined with glowing panels that flickered and died. Smoke filled the air, bitter and sharp. He followed the sound, a faint, uneven breath, not from a machine, but from someone alive. And then he saw her. She sat against the wall, armored yet broken, her silver gear cracked, wires sparking, her crown bent, her eyes burning like stars. She was tall, fierce but wounded, her hands pressing against the shattered chest plate of her suit. Her gaze rose to him, sharp as a blade, heavy with command. "You," she said, voice rough but strong. "You will fix this." The man blinked, stunned. This was no soldier, no common traveler. This was someone higher, someone dangerous, someone whose very presence felt like history alive. Her armor, no, her gear, was beyond anything he had seen. It was ancient and alive, humming faintly, almost breathing, but it was broken, and without it she would not last long. He wanted to ask who she was, why she was here, what had happened, but her stare silenced him. There was no question in her eyes, only command. His hands, trained by years of repairs and survival, moved without thought. He pulled tools from his belt, examined the gear, traced wires, touched circuits glowing with alien energy, and then something strange happened. The gear responded. It hummed louder, lights flickering under his touch, panels shifting as if welcoming him. The alien princess, and for he now knew she was a princess. No other word fit. Watched closely, her eyes narrowing as if she expected this, as if she had been waiting. Minutes turned to hours, the nebula outside swirling in silence. He worked, sweat running down his neck, tools clattering, sparks flying, until at last the gear pulsed with power, alive again. The princess rose, her strength returning, her armor glowing faintly with restored life. She looked at him, and for the first time a smile touched her lips. Not kind, not soft, but something sharp and knowing. "You fix what no one else can," she whispered. "The gear knows you. It accepts you." He frowned, confused, tired, still holding his tool in one hand. And then she said the word that would change his life forever. Consort. The sound echoed in the hollow ship, soft but heavy like thunder whispered in a dream. The man's heart pounded. He did not know the meaning. Not fully, but he felt the weight of it, the chains it carried, the path it forced. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, alarms blared, lights flared red, and the ship trembled. Something was coming. Something fast. Something deadly. The princess turned to him, her armor glowing, her eyes fierce. "They have found me," she said, voice sharp, unshaken. "And now they have found you too." The man stood frozen, his tools shaking in his hands. He had only wanted to repair his ship to survive another day. But now he was caught in a storm that stretched across stars, bound by a word he did not understand, tied to a princess he could not escape. And in that moment, as the shadows closed in, the real story began. Gear of the ancients. The ship shook as alarms echoed, red light spilling across broken walls, and the engineer braced himself while the alien princess moved with sudden strength, her armor alive again, glowing with faint silver lines like veins of lightning. The attack did not come yet, only the warning, but it was enough to remind him that danger was near, hunting them both. Still, the princess did not run, she did not panic. She only turned her gaze back to him, sharp and steady, as if the world could wait. "You repaired it," she said, voice firm, carrying both respect and command. "But you do not understand what you touched." The man frowned, wiping sweat from his brow. "I only fixed wires, circuits, that's all." Her eyes narrowed, the glow of her armor reflecting in them like twin stars. "No, you awakened it, and it awakened you." He wanted to argue, to laugh, to dismiss her words as royal riddles, but deep inside he knew something had happened. When he touched that gear, when the sparks danced under his fingers, it had not been like repairing any machine. It had been alive, it had listened, it had chosen. The princess rose fully now, her wounds hidden beneath the repaired plates of her suit, and the air around her felt heavy, as if she carried not just armor but history itself. "This is not a machine," she explained, her voice steady but laced with pride. "This is legacy. It is called the astral gear, forged before your world lit its first fires, carried by rulers of my line for 1,000 cycles. No hands but ours can command it." The man shifted uneasily, tools still in his belt, heart pounding. "Then why did it listen to me?" For a moment, silence. The nebula outside pulsed, clouds shifting like slow waves, and her eyes softened, though only slightly. "Because it knows," she whispered. "It knows the one who must walk beside me." He shook his head quickly, fear and disbelief twisting inside him. "No, I am no warrior, no ruler, I am an engineer. I fix things. That's all I do." But she stepped closer, towering, her armor humming faintly. "Do you think survival is small? Do you think repair is weakness? Empires fall because no one knows how to hold them together. Machines die because no one remembers how to listen. You listened. That is why it accepted you." Her words were heavy, almost crushing. He wanted to run, to escape, to return to his quiet life of broken ships and lonely stars. But already the gear pulsed faintly at his presence, almost as if calling him back. The princess turned away, kneeling before a console, her hands tracing symbols that glowed under her touch. Strange maps filled the screen, not just stars but paths hidden between them, secret routes of her people. "You are marked now," she said. "They will not stop. Raiders, assassins, soldiers of the false throne, they will all hunt you because the astral gear chose you when it should not." The man's chest tightened. He had not asked for this. He had not asked to be chosen, to be dragged into some royal war. And yet deep down something stirred. Fear, yes, but also wonder. He had touched power that should have been impossible. The console beeped, flashing with warning. The enemy ships were drawing closer, their signals sharp and cold. The princess rose, her voice calm, unshaken. "There is time before they strike. You will repair the rest of the gear." He stared at her, stunned. "The rest? I barely fixed one piece. I don't even understand it." "You will," she said simply, as if it was already decided. "It speaks to you, and when it is whole again, you will not be only an engineer, you will be consort." The word stabbed him again, strange and heavy. He hated it, he feared it, but part of him could not stop thinking about it. Consort. What did it truly mean in her world? He knelt by the armor again, his hands brushing against plates etched with alien symbols. The more he touched it, the more it seemed to guide him. Panels shifting, wires sliding into place, circuits humming like they remembered his fingers. It was not just repair, it was partnership. The princess watched him silently, her eyes unreadable. He could not tell if she was pleased or if she feared him as much as he feared her. Outside, the nebula flickered with distant flashes of enemy engines. Inside, the astral gear glowed brighter under his touch. Piece by piece, spark by spark, it was coming alive. And as it awakened, so did the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. At last, the chest plate sealed, glowing fully, sending a hum across the ship like a heartbeat. The man pulled his hand away, trembling. The princess stepped closer, placing her palm against the glowing armor, her voice quiet but filled with something almost human. "Now you begin to see," she said. "This is not repair. This is bond. And once the gear bonds, it never lets go." The man swallowed hard, staring at his reflection in the silver glow, wondering if he had already lost the quiet life he once had, wondering if he had stepped into a story written long before he was born. But before he could answer, the ship shook again, harder, fiercer. The enemy had arrived, and the astral gear, glowing bright, seemed to whisper in his bones. The first attack. The nebula was no longer silent. The engineer felt the ship tremble, a deep vibration that rattled every wall, every loose wire, every bone in his body. The red light spun, alarm screamed, and outside, hidden in the storm of gas and color, enemy engines burned like dark stars. He gripped the edge of the console, his hands shaking, but the alien princess stood tall, her armor glowing with renewed power, her face calm, almost cold. "They have come," she said, as if she had been waiting. The engineer's heart pounded. "How many?" Her eyes narrowed as she studied the signals on the screen. "Not many. A vanguard. Enough to test us. Enough to kill you if you run." The words cut deep. He wanted to deny them, to say he would fight, but fear clung to him like chains. He was no soldier. He had fixed her gear, yes, but fixing machines was not the same as facing ships filled with killers. The hull groaned as the first blast struck, shaking the corridors. Sparks rained down, smoke filled the air. The princess did not flinch. She turned to him, her voice sharp. "You will hold them off." He stared at her in disbelief. "Me? With what?" "I have no weapons." She moved closer, her armor humming with silver light, and placed her hand on his chest. A spark passed between them, quick and hot. He gasped, stumbling back as a faint glow spread across his skin, a shimmer of the astral gear reaching out to him. "You have more than weapons," she said. "The gear has marked you. It will not let you fall." He looked down at his hands. They glowed faintly as if the circuits of her armor had bled into him. He felt stronger, faster, sharper, but he did not understand it, and that frightened him more. The ship shook again, the impact closer this time. The princess drew her blade, a weapon alive with light, humming with ancient power, and strode toward the hatch. "They will board. Be ready." The hatch hissed, metal creaked, and then the enemy came. Dark figures burst through, armored raiders with jagged masks, their weapons glowing with red fire. They moved fast, ruthless, like wolves tearing into prey. The engineer froze. The world slowed. His breath caught in his chest. For a moment, he could not move. But then one raider lunged at him, blade raised, and instinct took over. He raised his hands, and the faint glow surged into a shield of light, shimmering and sharp. The blade struck, sparks flew, and the raider stumbled back in shock. The engineer's own shock was greater. He had made the shield without thinking, as if the astral gear itself had guided him. His heart raced, his fear twisting into something else. Something close to power. The princess moved like fire beside him, her blade cutting through enemies with deadly grace. Sparks and screams filled the corridor. She fought like she had been born in war. Every strike precise, every movement royal. But still, the raiders pressed forward. More came, pouring through the hatch, their shouts echoing in alien tongues. The engineer ducked, blocked, stumbled, but each time the gear shielded him. Each time it pushed him forward. He grabbed a fallen tool, then a plasma torch, and swung it wildly, catching one raider across the chest. The armor melted, the enemy fell, and the engineer gasped at his own strike. The battle raged, fierce and chaotic. The princess cut down foes with fire and light, while the engineer fought clumsily but with growing strength, his hands glowing brighter with every strike. He was no warrior, but the gear made him survive, and survival was its own kind of victory. At last, the raiders pulled back. The survivors shouted into their comms, retreating through the hatch, their engines roaring as their ships pulled away into the nebula. The silence returned, heavy, broken only by the hiss of smoke and the pounding of his heart. The engineer collapsed against the wall, breathing hard, sweat dripping down his face. His hand still glowed faintly, but now the glow felt heavy, like chains he could not remove. The princess wiped her blade clean, her expression unreadable. She looked at him, studied him, and finally spoke. They know, she said. He looked up, exhausted. Know what? Her eyes burned with silver fire. They know the gear has chosen you. They will tell the galaxy. And now, you are no longer only an engineer. You are consort. The word fell again, heavy as stone. He wanted to reject it, to scream that it was not his name, not his destiny. But deep inside he knew the moment had already passed. The gear had bonded. The raiders had seen. His life was no longer his own. The princess stepped closer, her voice low, almost gentle. You survived your first attack, she said. Do not forget it. Few do. The engineer closed his eyes, his chest rising and falling. He had wanted nothing but silence, nothing but freedom. Yet now he stood at the edge of war, his hands glowing with power he did not understand, his name bound to a princess he barely knew. And in the shadows of the nebula, more ships waited, more enemies whispered, more destinies burned. The first attack was only the beginning. Secrets of the princess. The nebula grew quiet again, but the silence was not peace. The human engineer sat on the floor of the broken corridor, his back pressed against the cold wall, his chest rising and falling like he had run 1,000 miles. His hands still glowed faintly, small traces of silver light crawling across his skin like living veins, and he could not shake the feeling that his body was no longer his own. The princess walked through the smoke, her armor humming, her blade at her side, her crown tilted slightly from battle. She moved with calm grace, as if the fight had been nothing more than a test she had already expected to win. But her eyes never left him. You fight poorly, she said, her voice sharp yet strangely calm. But you did not die. That is what matters. The engineer gave a bitter laugh, clutching his arm where the shield of light had saved him from a killing strike. Not dying is the only thing I've been good at. For a moment she did not answer. She only studied him like he was a puzzle with missing pieces. Finally she spoke again, quieter this time. You wonder what it means, do you not? The word I called you. His head lifted, his throat dry. Consort. You keep saying it like I should understand. She moved closer, her silver armor glowing faintly in the dim corridor. In my people's tongue, consort is not a simple title. It is not only a companion, not only a partner. It is one chosen by the astral gear, one who shares its bond, its power, and its destiny. The gear has never chosen an outsider. Until you. The engineer's stomach tightened. He shook his head, desperate to push the word away. I'm no chosen one. I'm not a prince, not a warrior. I fix broken machines. I don't belong to your throne or your war. The princess's gaze hardened. And yet the gear belongs to you now. That is all that matters, the word struck like a hammer. He wanted to fight them, to deny them, but deep inside he knew she was right. When the raider's blade had come down, it was not skill that saved him, not luck. It was the gear, it had shielded him. It had claimed him. The princess turned away, her cloak brushing the floor as she walked toward the central chamber. He followed, unwilling but unable to stop himself, curiosity pulling at him like gravity. The chamber was vast, lined with alien carvings glowing faintly with blue light. At the center stood a pedestal, cracked but still alive, pulsing with the same hum as the astral gear. The princess placed her hand on it, and the walls lit up with shifting images, battles across the stars. Fleets clashing, thrones rising and falling. My people are at war, she said, her voice softer now, almost like a confession. A usurper has taken the crown. He commands armies, mercenaries, assassins. He hunts me because I am the last of the true line, and now he will hunt you too. The engineer's chest tightened as he watched the images dance across the walls. Armies marched under banners he could not read. Fleets burned in space, whole worlds trembled. He had never wanted to be part of such things. He had only wanted to survive, to wander, to live quietly among the stars. You should have let me die, he whispered. The princess turned, her eyes fierce, her voice sharp. No, you should have walked away. But you did not. The gear called and you answered. That was your choice, whether you see it or not. Her words cut deep. He wanted to scream at her, to tell her he had no choice, that he had been pulled in by curiosity and fear, not destiny. But the truth twisted inside him. She was right. He had chosen. He had followed the signal when he could have ignored it. He had repaired the gear when he could have walked away. He had stepped into her story, and now it was his. The princess moved closer, her voice lowering, almost a whisper. I will not lie to you, human. Consort is not only power. It is burden. To carry the gear is to be hunted until the end of your days. You cannot remove it. You cannot return to what you were. The engineer closed his eyes, his hands trembling. Then what am I supposed to do? Her gaze softened just slightly. You learn. You survive. And you stand beside me, not as servant, not as prisoner, but as chosen. If you live, the throne may live again. If you fall, then both of us are lost. The chamber grew silent. The images on the walls faded, leaving only the faint hum of the gear between them. For the first time since he had found her, the engineer saw more than a princess. He saw someone who carried the weight of a broken empire, someone who had lost more than he could imagine, someone who wore armor not only for battle but for grief, and for the first time, she saw him not only as consort, not only as chosen, but as a man standing at the edge of a storm, trembling yet unbroken. The silence was broken by a sharp beeping from the console. More signals. More enemies. The galaxy was closing in faster than either of them could prepare. The princess turned to him, her eyes burning with fierce resolve. Then let us see if the gear chose wisely. The engineer swallowed hard, his hands glowing faintly again, his heart heavy with fear and something else, something dangerously close to courage. The secrets were no longer hidden. The truth had been spoken, and now the storm of destiny would not wait. The betrayal, the journey through the nebula ended at last. The wounded royal ship, patched and limping, emerged into clearer space. Before them waited a hidden outpost, small, quiet, tucked into the shadow of a dead moon. Its metal walls gleamed faintly, its signals weak but familiar to the princess. This place is loyal, she said, her eyes fixed on the outpost as if she wanted to believe her own words. Old friends remain here. We will find repair food in time. The engineer did not answer. His hands still bore faint traces of the astral gear's glow, and every time he looked at them, he felt less human. He had agreed to follow her this far, but doubt crawled inside him like fire. Would every step lead him deeper into chains he could never break? The docking was smooth. The outpost welcomed them with open gates, lights flashing in greeting. Armed guards stood at attention as they entered, their armor marked with the royal crest, a silver star wrapped in wings. The princess walked proudly among them, her cloak brushing the steel floor, her head high like a ruler returning home. The engineer stayed close but not too close, his eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. Something about the silence of the place felt wrong. Then came the general. He was tall, armored in dark silver, his voice deep and commanding. The moment he saw the princess, he knelt, one fist against the floor. "My lady," he said, his tone filled with reverence. "We feared you lost." The princess allowed herself the smallest nod. "I live, and I return not alone." She gestured toward the engineer. "This one is chosen. The gear has named him Consort." The general's head lifted slightly, his eyes flicking toward the human. For a brief second, the engineer thought he saw something. Surprise, maybe, or something colder, sharper. But then the general bowed again, hiding it behind loyalty. "You honor us, my lady," the general said smoothly. "Come, rest. The false throne spreads lies through the stars. But here you are safe. Safe." The word tasted bitter in the engineer's mouth. He followed silently as they were led deeper into the outpost. Food was offered, chambers were prepared. For the first time in days, the engineer sat on a clean bed, the hum of machines steady and calm. But still his chest was heavy. He did not trust this place. That night, while the princess slept in her chamber, the engineer wandered. He traced the halls, listening to the whispers of soldiers. He caught words he did not understand, words twisted by secrecy. And then he heard it, clear, sharp, impossible to mistake. "Tomorrow. We give her to the usurper. The bounty is worth more than loyalty." The engineer froze, his heart hammering. His breath caught as the truth cut through him like ice. This outpost, this general, these so-called loyal soldiers, all of it was a lie. They would sell her, betray her, hand her over to the throne that hunted her. He stumbled back, his mind racing. He could leave. He could steal a ship and run, escape this madness before it crushed him. He was not a hero. He was not royalty. He owed her nothing, and yet he saw her face in his mind, the way she had stood unbroken in battle, the way her voice had carried both strength and sorrow when she told him the truth of her war. She had called him consort, and though he hated the word, it clung to him like fire. He could not abandon her. The engineer slipped back into the chamber, waking her with urgent hands. Her eyes snapped open, sharp, blade-like, ready for attack. He whispered quickly, the words tumbling out in fear. They will betray you. The general, he made a deal. They will hand you over. The princess rose, her armor whispering as it sealed around her body. For a moment her face was unreadable, caught between fury and grief. Then she nodded once, cold and sharp. I suspected, she said softly, but I needed to see if he would dare. The door burst open before they could move. The general stood there, soldiers at his side, weapons raised. His eyes no longer hid the truth. They gleamed with greed and triumph. My lady, he said, his voice dripping with false respect. Forgive me. The galaxy changes. Loyalty is worth nothing compared to power. And you are worth more alive to him than dead with us. The princess drew her blade, silver fire bursting from its edge. The engineer grabbed the closest thing he could, a plasma wrench from the table. His hands glowed again, the astral gear answering his fear. The chamber erupted in battle. Blades clashed, sparks flew, walls shook. The general fought like a giant, every strike heavy and merciless. The princess met him blow for blow, her fury shining like fire. Soldiers swarmed, but the engineer struck wildly, the gear guiding his clumsy hands, shielding him again and again. The fight was chaos, smoke, blood, fire, betrayal. The princess's cry cut through it all, sharp and furious. Traitor! The general laughed even as he staggered under her blows. The throne will have you. The gear will not save you forever. But the astral gear pulsed, its glow flooding brighter across the engineer's arms. With one desperate strike, he drove the plasma wrench into the console, overloading the chamber's systems. Sparks exploded, lights died, the room filled with fire and smoke. In the chaos, the princess and the engineer broke free, running through collapsing halls, alarms screaming. Behind them, the general roared, his voice fading as the outpost burned. They reached the dock, leapt into their ship, engines roaring as they tore into the stars. Only when the nebula swallowed the outpost behind them did silence return. The engineer collapsed into the seat, his chest heaving, his hands trembling. The princess stood beside him, her face lit by the glow of the stars. Her voice was steady, cold, unbroken. Now you see, she said, even those who bow will betray. Only the chosen can stand beside me. Her eyes burned into his. And you are chosen. The word, consort, echoed again, heavy as chains, sharp as destiny, and the engineer knew. There was no turning back. War of Crowns. The outpost was gone, left behind in fire and betrayal, but the war followed them like a shadow. The engineer sat in the cockpit, sweat still cooling on his skin, his hands faintly glowing where the astral gear had touched him. He had fought again, not by choice but by survival, and each time the gear wrapped tighter around his fate. The princess stood at his side, her armor dim but steady, her eyes fixed on the star map ahead. She had said little since their escape. Yet silence itself was heavy, carrying the weight of worlds lost and wars waiting. Finally she spoke. The usurper spreads faster than I feared. His banners burn across half my empire. Fleets kneel to him, not because they believe, but because fear pays better than loyalty. The engineer leaned back, his voice dry. Sounds like every war in history. The strong take, the weak bend. Her gaze flicked to him, sharp but thoughtful. Then you know why bending is death. We cannot run forever. To fight him, I must gather those who still remember the true crown. But first, she turned, her eyes locking on him. You must learn what the gear has made of you. He swallowed hard, looking down at his hands. The faint light was gone for now, but he still felt it under his skin, humming like a second heartbeat. I never asked for this, he muttered. No one asks for destiny, she replied. It takes, and it tests. If you cannot bear it, the gear will kill you before any enemy does. Her words struck cold, but part of him already knew the gear was no gift. It was a chain, alive and watching, waiting to see if he was worthy. Hours later, the ship descended on a barren moon, its surface cracked like broken glass. At its heart lay a hidden fortress carved into stone and shadow. Here the princess had allies, or so she believed. Inside, soldiers trained in silence, their armor scarred but loyal. They bowed as she passed, whispering her name like a prayer. The engineer felt their eyes on him, some curious, some hostile. A human among royalty marked as consort by the gear. To them he was either chosen or curse. The princess wasted no time. She led him to a chamber lined with ancient relics, weapons glowing faintly with alien energy. At the center stood a circle of stone carved with symbols older than empires. "Stand there," she ordered. He hesitated. "Why?" "Because the gear demands it." Reluctantly, he stepped into the circle. At once the walls lit, symbols burning with silver fire. Pain seared through his chest as the gear's glow flared across his body, brighter than ever before. He cried out, falling to his knees, his vision swimming. The princess did not move. She watched, unflinching, as the gear tested him. Images crashed into his mind, fleets burning, crowns breaking, himself standing in battle where he did not belong. He saw his own death 100 times, but also victories he could not explain. The gear was showing him what could be if he endured. At last, the light faded. He collapsed, gasping, his body trembling like he had been torn apart and rebuilt in fire. The princess knelt beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. For the first time, her voice was almost gentle. "You lived, few do. The gear accepts you more deeply now. But know this, and with each bond, you lose a part of what you were. The man who walked into this circle is not the man who stands up now." The engineer closed his eyes, his breath shaking. "Then who am I?" Her answer was simple. "Consort." The word fell again, heavy as a crown. He wanted to reject it, to scream against it, but deep inside he knew it was already true. The gear had no mercy, no escape. Their moment ended with alarms. A soldier burst into the chamber, shouting in panic. "They've found us! The usurper's fleet approaches!" The princess rose instantly, her blade drawn. "How many?" "Dozens of ships. Too many to hold." The engineer staggered to his feet, fear knotting his chest. They had barely escaped the outpost, and now the war itself had caught them. The princess turned to him, her eyes fierce. "This is no longer escape. This is battle. War of Crowns begins here." Outside, the sky burned as enemy ships descended, fire lighting the barren moon. Soldiers shouted, preparing defenses, but the engineer saw the truth. They were outnumbered, outgunned, already doomed, and yet the astral gear stirred within him, its hum growing louder, demanding to be unleashed. The princess placed a hand on his arm, her voice low. "You fear good, but now you must fight not for survival but for throne. Stand with me, consort. If we fall here, the true crown dies with us." The engineer looked at her, at the fire in her eyes, at the soldiers ready to die for her name. He felt the weight of every choice pressing down. He had been a wanderer, an engineer, no one, but now destiny dragged him forward, armed with a power he never wanted. The first blasts shook the fortress. Stone crumbled, fire roared, and the War of Crowns began. The princess lifted her blade. The engineer's hands blazed with gear light, and together they stepped into the storm. The throne of stars, the fortress burned. The barren moon shook under the weight of war, and the sky above split open with fire as fleets clashed in orbit. The usurper's banners spread across the stars, dark wings devouring light. Yet in the heart of chaos, the princess stood unbroken, her silver armor glowing, her blade alive with fire. Beside her, the human engineer felt the astral gear blaze inside him, brighter and heavier than ever. His hands shook, but not from fear, from power trying to escape, from destiny pressing against the edges of his soul. The princess looked at him once, her eyes fierce but steady. "This is it. The throne lies ahead. If we break through, we strike at the usurper himself. If we fail, then nothing remains." He swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had been many things, a wanderer, mechanic, survivor, but never a warrior. Yet now the gear wrapped around him like armor made of light, and for the first time he did not feel small. He felt chosen. They moved together through fire and ruin, cutting a path to the central chamber of the fortress where the usurper waited. Soldiers fell around them, loyalists giving their lives to open the way. The engineer fought clumsily but fiercely, every blow guided by the gear, every shield rising just in time. The princess struck with deadly grace, her fury burning brighter than the stars. At last, the gates of the chamber shattered, and there he was. The usurper sat upon the broken throne, draped in black and silver, his crown forged from stolen light. His eyes burned with greed, his armor pulsed with power stolen from relics he did not deserve. Behind him, banners hung torn but proud, symbols twisted from the true crest of the crown. The usurper rose slowly, his voice carrying across the chamber like poison. "So the lost princess crawls home, and with her, a human pet. Tell me, little girl, is this what your empire has fallen to? Consort of dirt and ash? The princess raised her blade, her voice sharp and steady. Better a consort chosen by the gear than a king who steals crowns with lies. The usurper laughed, deep and cruel. He drew his weapon, a massive blade dark with shadow energy stolen from ancient forges. Then let us see who the gear favors. The battle began. The chamber shook with every strike. The usurper was powerful, his blows heavy enough to crack stone, his armor feeding on dark energy. The princess met him, her blade of silver light clashing against shadow, sparks flying with each strike. The engineer fought too, but his enemy was not the usurper. It was the gear itself. It demanded more, pushed harder, whispering in his bones to unleash everything, to burn brighter than human flesh could endure. His vision blurred, his heart raced, but he held on. The princess faltered, her armor cracking under the usurper's blows. He laughed, raising his blade high for the final strike. And in that moment, the engineer stepped forward. The gear roared to life, wrapping him fully in light, forming armor across his body, a crown of silver fire across his brow. His shield rose, blocking the usurper's blade, the impact echoing like thunder. The usurper's eyes widened. Impossible! The engineer's voice, though shaking, carried through the chamber. Not impossible. Human. He struck, not with skill, but with everything he had. Every spark of courage, every ounce of defiance. The gear amplified it, turning his desperate blow into a storm of light. The usurper staggered, his armor cracking, his crown shattering. The princess rose beside him, her blade glowing brighter than ever. Together, consort and princess struck as one. Their blades cut through shadow, their power merging in a single strike that tore the false crown apart. The usurper screamed as his throne crumbled beneath him, his power collapsing into dust and fire. The chamber shook, the banners burned, and with one final crash, the usurper was no more. Silence followed. Heavy and endless, the princess stood tall, her blade lowered, her armor broken but shining. The engineer knelt, the gear fading back into his skin, leaving him trembling and breathless. He had no crown, no royal blood, but in that moment he had stood against a king and won. The princess turned to him, her eyes soft for the first time. She stepped closer, her voice quiet but filled with something more than command. You are no longer only human. You are no longer only wanderer. You are consort, my chosen, my equal. He looked up at her, exhaustion in his eyes, confusion still heavy in his chest. And what does that mean? Am I king now? Am I ruler of your stars? She smiled, faint but real. A smile that carried both victory and sorrow. No, you are more dangerous than a king. You are partner to the crown. You are hope when empires fall. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder. Stand with me forever. The engineer stared at her, at the ruins around them, at the throne of stars shattered and waiting to be rebuilt. He had never wanted destiny. He had never wanted power. Yet here he was, bound not by chains but by choice. He rose slowly, his legs weak but steady. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the broken chamber. Then I will stand. The princess bowed her head once, as if sealing a vow older than both of them. Outside, the fleets began to scatter, the usurper's forces broken, the galaxy whispering of a throne reclaimed. Inside, two figures stood together, one born of royal blood, one born of human fire. And the astral gear hummed softly, alive with new power. The war of crowns was not over. Enemies would rise again. Betrayals would cut deeper. The galaxy would not forgive easily. But for now, the throne of stars was theirs. And so, the story of the consort had only just begun.